All right, so what I want to talk to you about today is TypeScript. So TypeScript, as many of you know, is related to JavaScript. It's actually a superset of JavaScript to help make life better. So my purpose is to talk to you about how this can impact your development today and in the future. So first I'll get into the background of TypeScript, where it came from, why it's here, and then because it is a superset of JavaScript, I'm going to show you some easy ways of how to take your TypeScript and turn it into JavaScript. And then I'm going to go over some of the biggest differences between TypeScript and ES 2015. So TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. It's created by Microsoft back in 2012, and the whole purpose was to solve the problem of creating JavaScript applications on the enterprise scale. So Microsoft was using JavaScript, they loved it, but when it came to building complex components, it got way too complex way too quick, and they decided they needed custom tooling to fix those problems. So they didn't want to get rid of JavaScript. Like I said, they loved it. But what they wanted to do was to look at classes and with promises and a way to sync. So what they decided to do was they knew a class is actually going to turn into this if we compiled it down to ES5 code. And then they also added a little bit of syntactic sugar for variable typing. That syntactic sugar that they added, what they're able to do is say, hey, we can build tooling now to say we are going to allow JavaScript to be dynamic, but if we want to, we can tie it down a little more. But so in essence, really, TypeScript was a precursor to ES 2015. They gave us a little more. So let's talk about transpiling TypeScript to JavaScript. So you can do it through the command line. You'll need to install TypeScript. You can get it through Node Package Manager, Yarn, whatever you really want to. But then I'll show you, after I show you how to compile with command line, just some easy things that VS Code does to help us out. So let's take a simple TypeScript file. So we'll actually come back to this example, this file later on to look at it. But so what I'm going to do is let's come over to our Z shell. So what I can do is I can use this TypeScript compiler that comes when you install TypeScript to compile this file. So when I do this, it's going to turn it into JavaScript up here. And so I now have a JavaScript file that is, this code snippet right here compared to this one is the reason behind TypeScript. But let's say I don't want to have to manually do that every time. So what TypeScript also comes with is you can initialize a tsconfig file. And so now when I run the tsc command, it will go read this config file, which allows me to change maybe the target of JavaScript that I want to get to, maybe this out file and out directory where I want to put them to, and also strict mode, because it's always better when you're strict in JavaScript. So now that I've done that, something I can do is, for Mac users, this is Command-Shift-B, but I can open up my task runner. And so what I can do is I can set a watch on this tsconfig file. So now you can see it automatically when it did this. Whenever I come and save, so I have autosave on, so we'll just put a comment in here. So now that I've saved it, it'll come recompile. As you can see, it's already down here, but I don't ever have to worry about what's going on there. I've already done the demo. Let's come into, now that you know that TypeScript basically is, some people like to call it ES+. So it's whatever kind of the standard of the day is, and then they're going to add just a little bit more. And this little bit more, as you might have seen in the last snippet, we can do variable typing. And we can also do that with classes. And so classes are really the same as they are in ES 2015, but I just want to show you a little bit of what they can do more. And then we have modules and namespaces, and I'll explain that when we get a little closer. So for variable typing, we can look up here in this top code snippet. We can say, hey, we have these two parameters. I want them to be numbers. And this function, what it's going to return is a number. And actually, I just realized that these are all numbers. So we'll move past that in a little bit. But so you'll need to, if you use that strict equals true that I showed you, which is the default for your compiler, what it's going to do is say that you have to have a type for every variable except for just a few random cases, which are usually parameters inside of here. So if I just did left, right, and I forgot to put the type they were going to be, but I'd put the type that it was going to return, that's one thing that TypeScript says, okay, I can go infer that if left and right have to, if adding those has to return a number, then those better be numbers. And if you put something in there that's not a number, I'll watch for that part. We also get back header files if you miss your C++ days. If you don't, skip forward 30 seconds. If you do, this is something nice that you don't have to use header files. You know, this will help with compiling it down to JavaScript in the future if you have some build pipelines set up. So let's go look at a demo of this now. So let's come over to our typing. So let's look at this greeter function. So we look, and so we can use strings here. So now I know that when I call this greeter thing, I want to pass in a string, or this greeter function. And so now what the tooling here gives us is if so right now it tells me, oh, can't find name user. But let's say I said I want to pass it an array. It says, no, like I'm not going to let you take a number array and give it to me as a string. Like you can't pull that fast one on me. And that's what was happening in JavaScript early on. Is we were doing a lot of that. We still do it. I know when I have some very complex objects that I'm passing around, trying to watch where everything needs to go and how things need to be returned to be in the right shape for what was calling it, it gets messy. And so what we're going to get is TypeScript. It says, hey, you can use these types to make your life easier. So let's move on to classes now, because it's very related. Because if you look at, so you can look at these classes here with TypeScript, outside of our typing here, this is ES6, ES 2015 syntax. Here's the equivalent ES5. And if you put them into Babel or put them in ES3, and it'll be an insane length compared to what's here. But so these will compile down to the same thing. But what I want to show you is, we're going to go back to that animals example. And so with this, this is a very simple, we're going to create an animal class, and we're going to create a snake and a horse that extends animals. And we're going to give them a constructor that's a name that sets their name, and then gives us some function that they can use. So what we can do here though is not only can we do our basic types, we can say, hey, I'm going to type something as a class that I've created. So if we look at this, we can say, Tom, he better be an animal, but we're going to create him as a horse. So a horse better be an animal. Something we could have said here, maybe let's come up here and show it on Sam. Let's say, hey, we want Sam to be an animal, or he can be, if we, a snake for some reason didn't extend from an animal, he could be an animal or a snake. Probably easier just to show this on something else. So I can come here, I can come type this, and I can say I want it to be a string, or an animal, or a number array, or what's something else fun, or a Boolean. Input can be any of those. And so now if I need to have some flexibility, I can, but I need to be very explicit about what I'm doing here. And I can use primitive types, and I can use my own types in classes to create new functionality for myself while still trying to be smart about it. All right, so moving on to modules and namespaces. So modules are the exact same as they are in ES 2015. They used to call what we know as modules external modules, and these namespaces they called internal modules. And you can see it's just, we could replace module here and namespace, and they're going to act about the same. There's some slight differences that we can use a demo to see. So let's come over here. So let's look at modules real quick. So let's open all these up. Get rid of these classes. Oh, that was something I was playing with earlier. So what we have here is we have a validation, really a set of validation modules. So we have this top string validator module, so it's going to check a string, and so we're going to say, we want to check if it's a zip code string or a letters only string because we care. So if we wanted to come through, we could import all of these, and we say, okay, like let's create a set of validators. So our zip code validator, our letters only, and let's go check some inputs. So we're gonna check hello, 98052 and 101. And that's nice. We believe that this works, and it does. But something here is, what if I start to build some large applications? And I have this, maybe this is called validation email. Ignore the errors for a little bit. But what if I have a string validator from validation address? I know those are pretty small and they're contrived examples, but this happens. I mean, if we're trying to build simple modules and classes to make our lives better, I'm not gonna name this address string validator. I might call it string validator on whatever it is they're giving me. And so we can run into, if we just have modules, there's going to be some conflicts. And back in the day with some different languages, we called those namespace conflicts. So let's exit out of all these and let's show how namespaces help us out. So now we can do this in separate files like we did with modules, but I just did it in one just to make it a little simpler to see. So we have our namespace validation, the exact same code as what we had earlier. The only thing that's going to be different here is we're going to see, now we're going to use these internal modules or namespaces as they should be called to almost create that middle ground between modules and classes. So I don't want to create a class of all these things because I want this all to be separate, but I want them all to be related at the same time. So I don't have to put all of these in the same class, but they need to be related more than just, hey, like it's named this from this module. I want to say, hey, validation has this, but it's okay if we have something else called requirements that has this. Like, let's just show an example of that real quick. Let's just, wow, I don't know what I just did there. But so let's call this requirements. So now all of a sudden, all of our issues go away. So I'm just going to call it validatores. But let's come up here and let's use requirements. So I can have these, I can have simple names that might tie back to the same object, but I can use them in a related way. So now I'm sorry these examples are a little contrived, but this shows the power that just a few extra things to your JavaScript can benefit you. And so I just want to end with one quote. So John Papa, he's a Microsoft developer advocate. He's been a senior developer and architect at many large companies, and he also does a lot of Pluralsight courses. And he says the value in TypeScript is not in writing less code. The value of TypeScript is in writing safer code. Over the long haul, it helps us to write code more efficiently. And so that's the whole purpose of JavaScript, is that we're gonna use JavaScript and all the benefits of it, but we're gonna be smart and we're gonna make our life easier so that we don't have a bug sometime in production when all of a sudden we didn't test something enough and we have enough users coming in that something breaks, and no one wants that stress. So what we can do is just as easy as to write in JavaScript, we'll use TypeScript, which essentially is JavaScript, but we can use all of these different features to help us make scalable code. And so I hope you've seen the benefit of TypeScript and have enjoyed getting to learn a little bit about it.